Parents, there was no social worker, there was no children's aid worker, there was no court worker. We were never supervised of our rights. After that court appearance, they sent us back out. We ended up in Sulikout. I remember after that court appearance, we got put in a jail cell, and I'm only 7 years old at that time, 8, and there's about 4 other kids. There's Louis Tate, Jimmy Monroe, Kenny Lawson, and Levius Wassaykeesic. Me being the youngest, well, I didn't have a clue as to what was going on. I thought we were going on a big trip again. So from Central Patricia, Ontario, they sent us off to Cobourg, the other side of Toronto. So again, I had to go through culture shock. Again, I had to go through this long trip. My first trip was to the residential school, but this time I'm going even further. I'm going to the other side of Toronto this time. And I ended up in Cobourg, the other side of Toronto. I don't know if you can find Cobourg on that, but it's on the other side of Toronto. And I remember being there I remember going through Bowmanville. I remember going through Guelph. I remember going through Cobourg. And then I ended up in Hagersville, one of the other training schools down around that area. So by that time, we were all down in training school. And this is where I heard some people from this little ministry they used to have in Central Patricia heard of our plight, heard of our troubles, and they told the family that was based in Dryden, Beaver Lake Camp. And this family turned around and got a hold of the training school and made an inquiry into our case, and they got interested in getting us into a foster home in Dryden. So from the training school in Hagersville, went back to Toronto. This is where we hooked up with the other people that had been sent down with. Levius Wassaykeesic, Louis Tate, Jimmy Monroe, and Kenny Lawson. They took us all the way back down to, again we traveled all the way back down. This time we ended up in Dryden. By this time I'm around 8 years old. Now this time I'm in Dryden. And so we lived in Dryden there for a while, and we had our, we had our stories there. We took off a few times, and kind of, I don't know, we were already kind of like young rebels at that time because of all the chaos at home and because of all the action that was going on there. We were already rebels, so we'd take off. They'd always catch us, and we'd always get brought back and stuff like that. But eventually, what happened in Dryden is that all the kids that I was with eventually either went home or went off into other group homes and foster homes. So the family that I was with in Dryden decided, since I couldn't go home, since there was still chaos in Central Patricia, Ontario with my family and with my mother, I couldn't go home. So from Dryden, again, I went down southern Ontario. This time the foster family took me all the way down to Kitchener, Ontario. So I'm doing all this traveling now. I'm a kid, man. I don't have a clue. I'm just being bounced around, man. I'm being told, well, you're going to go over this way now. So I end up in Kitchener, around the Kitchener area, Floridale, Ontario. It's by Kitchener. And I stayed with that family until I was about 11, 12, about 12 years old then, because I went there with Kenny Lawson. By that time, all the other kids that I went to training school with had already left and gone home because their families had moved out of Central Pat. They had moved on to different reserves, and then once the workers heard that they were stable, they sent them home. But since my life was still in chaos back home, I couldn't go home. So I ended up way down in Kitchener this time, around that area. Me and Kenny. And then Kenny got to go home, so I never seen Kenny after that. And I ended up with this foster family. I was the last one there. So while I'm in Kitchener, or while I'm in Floridale, Ontario, they wanted to ship me around my area. They wanted to put me in a home around my area back then, but they couldn't find a place to ship me to. But since the people that I was with was familiar with Beaver Lake Camp, based in Dryden, it's a Mennonite camp, it's a Christian camp, it's supposedly work with Native people and minister to the Native people. They had ties to Poplar Hill Residential School. And by that I mean, I want to show what I have on Poplar Hill Residential School. I want to give you a good idea as to what Poplar Hill Residential School is that I'm talking about. As soon as I get my and this is where I ended up. The second residential school that I attended, I can't say I attended, this is where they sent me. I didn't have no choice. This is where they put me. My second residential school experience. This paper here kind of gives the history of the Poplar Hill Residential School, Development School they call it here. But this is this here is a part of a book that they're writing about the Poplar Hill Residential School. The year, right from year one, right from the time it was developed. But while they sent me there, December 1975. Remember that, it was cold, it was in winter time. So which means I was down in Poplar Hill, or I was down in Floridale, down around the Kitchener, Ontario area, down southern Ontario. Again, I had to come all the way back up this way. And then I ended up in a residential school in Poplar Hill, which is located just north, I think it was north of Red Lake, Ontario.